The Korean Air Flight 007. The unknown plane which crashed and changed the course of how GPS will be used forever. What if we told you that this routine flight turned into one of the most enigmatic events of the Cold War era? Did it single-handedly brush secrets under the carpet that could have changed the course of history? The fateful night sky of September 1983 last saw the Korean airline flight 007 before it vanished into oblivion, hiding from the radar screens mysteriously. Unfortunately, nobody knows the fate of this pawn in a high-stacked game of espionage. Through all these years, the KAL 007's justice was served in the forms of speculations, assumptions, and conspiracies. But the truth is yet shrouded in mystery, held within the skies. So what happened? Was it an innocent casualty of the Cold War tensions? Or did the flight carry a load of secrets, too dangerous to reach its destination? Join us as we unravel the tangled web of the KAL 007 without any further ado. On August 31, 1983, it was hardly past 2 in the morning when Korean Airlines 007, a Boeing 747 commercial airplane, just departed Anchorage, Alaska. The airplane was a scheduled commercial flight that was supposed to land in Seoul, South Korea. The flight was almost full with 269 occupants. It included 240 passengers who were mainly South Koreans and Americans by ethnicity. The rest were pilots and flight attendants. The KAL 007 followed the principal mode of navigation, which was the Inertial Navigation System, INS. The scheduled and planned route for the specific plane was to travel from Anchorage to the Japanese mainland and then to its final destination, Seoul. This passenger aircraft had Captain Byung-in as its pilot. As most of you might not be aware, Captain Byung-in had a substantial record to his name. The man had 10 years' experience in the Korean Air Force and an additional 11 years with Korean Airlines. Captain Byung-in had already flown over the North Pacific route while traveling between Anchorage and Seoul 83 times before. It included 27 trips on the Romeo 20 route, designated specifically for this flight. To conclude, KAL 007 could not have been in better hands. Not long after its departure from Anchorage, within 10 minutes, the airplane started deviating towards the northwest direction. The reasons were never fully explained. Right after it defied its pre-planned Japanese track, the inexplicable deviation kept on increasing. After 3.5 hours of its takeoff, the deviation had arrived at 160 nautical miles. It is exactly when the airplane entered a no-entry zone. The jetliner crossed the boundaries of this high-risk region of Soviet airspace. It flew over the Kamchatka Peninsula, which is famous for its top-secret Soviet military installations. By this time, you might have pretty much guessed how strong of an off-limit zone it must be for a civilian aircraft. So, what happened next? The unfortunate. It's been almost a quarter of a century since the KAL 007 mysteriously shrouded in its final moments. The whole unfortunate incident had been quoted as the plane that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, so it was brought down. Well, the KAL 007 also holds a record of being one of the few recorded cases where a civilian passenger plane was shot down by a military fighter aircraft while being on a scheduled commercial route. The conspiracy we mentioned earlier had a layer of questions to finally arrive at the answers. Why did the plane fly over the Soviet airspace over the Kamchatka Peninsula? Was the pilot not aware that it was a no-entry zone and a home of top-secret Soviet military installations? Were the officials not aware of the disrupted political situations during an ongoing Cold War? Was the system not aware of unsettling relationships between the Soviet Union and the United States of America? Did it deviate by mistake, or was it scheduled to land where it was headed instead of the usual? While Captain Byung-in had an excellent safety record, so did most of the Boeing 747 aircraft. So the speculations made about the KAL 007 deviating into Soviet airspace by mistake appeared vague. Let us understand the course of events following KAL 007's entry on the death ground in particular. Right after the airplane was spotted hovering over the dangerous peninsula, Soviet air defenses tried to contact it. Unfortunately, the unidentified intruder did not respond. The Soviet air defenses tried passing signals, first on radio, then later via scrambled aircraft, but they were of no use. The interceptors automatically fired warning shots in front of the Boeing 747's nose, but the pilot couldn't see them. It was also possible that as there were no trace rounds, the pilot couldn't have spotted the warning shots at all. It created a hubbub in the Soviet military base. Following a few minutes, the airliner exited the Soviet airspace over the Sea of Okhotsk in Russia. Yes, you heard it right. The plane left in peace. To everybody's surprise, the jetliner had some unfinished business in the military peninsula, it seemed. About an hour after it left the no-entry zone, the airliner returned. It re-entered the Soviet air press over Sakhalin Island. What happened next was shrouded under military safety by the Soviet Union. This time, when the jetliner re-entered the territory, 2 Soviet fighters scrambled with orders to destroy the target on sight. Exactly at 6:26 p.m. on August 31, 1983, while the sky was still dark and probably the passengers slept through it all, 2 shots were fired at the unidentified Soviet intruder. With the help of a Su-15 Flagon, 1 air missile directly struck the plane while the other one exploded near it. As soon as the airliner came in contact with the military missiles, it fell straight into the Sea of Japan, like a wounded bird. Unfortunately, this time, the wounded bird had 269 alive, breathing people inside of it. Several years later, the attack major, pilot Gennady Osipovich, stated how he had initially recognized the uninvited guest as a commercial aeroplane. The attack pilot saw the flashing lights in the windows and immediately recognized the plane as a Boeing. He said that he knew it was a civilian plane, but it meant nothing to him. Throughout history, countries have constantly revolutionized strategies of using a commercial plane as a military aircraft, so the pilot did not reconsider his decision. Right after the shot, ground trackers tried to track the stricken plane for another 12 minutes. The efforts were in vain, as it finally disappeared near Manaran Island. At that point, the plane was already 275 nautical miles away from its planned track. To everyone's surprise, neither there were any mayday calls or any sort of distress warning. The Soviets immediately sent out rescue helicopters, civilian troops, and boats to the site and did not permit any other country to enter into their territorial waters. It took days and months until it was claimed that Korean Airlines 007 had been on a spy mission. In the following weeks, the Russians handed over a few wrecked metal parts. Isn't it weird that the chunks excavated were only a fraction of what should be expected from the crash of such a massive aircraft? Neither were the civilians' belongings found, nor their dead bodies. Hence, it was safe to say that the remains of Flight 007 were never recovered. The newspaper headlines were filled with grief. The world couldn't conclude whether it was a simple navigational error or was the pilot jeopardizing the lives of the 268 other passengers. The Soviet reports claimed that the flight had been involved in stepping into Cold War rhetoric. Transmissions between the airliner's flight crew and the Tokyo Air Traffic Control Center were released many years after the incident. For the longest time, the Soviets denied that the cockpit voice record and the flight data record were available to them. So the 1 minute 44 seconds voice record was claimed to be doctored. Another theory suggests that the jetliner did not in fact crash. It may have made an emergency landing in Soviet territory, but they kept denying it. Moreover, it was a period of extreme Cold War tensions. The Soviet forces were on hair-trigger alert. The rest of the theories speculate the Boeing aircraft to be on a secret intelligence mission sent by the United States. Apart from that, on the same morning, a U.S. Air Force RC-135 reconnaissance plane was about to engage in a mission to gather electronic intelligence over the same peninsula. So the Soviets could have simply mistaken the civilian Boeing for the U.S. spy aircraft. The International Aviation Organization's investigation concluded that no spies or missions were involved in the CAL 007. They speculated that the deviation in its path might be caused by a steady magnetic compass. On one hand, it could be simply a tragic mistake, resulting from miscommunications and errors in judgment or a deliberate act of aggression and conspiracy. Do let us know in the comments down below what you think of the whole CAL 007 fiasco. If you liked the video, don't forget to give the video a huge thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the post notification button to never miss a single update until the next time.